Welcome to Rock and Roll Fridays, a podcast on musical encounters and life.
Do a thing here.
Welcome to Rock and Roll Fridays, and I'm so happy to have a guest. Barry Hollander is joining me. Welcome, Barry.
Mike.
All right, so Barry is a musician, a music fan, obviously, for anyone that's on this show, it's all about music. So Barry, what I always ask is, what is it about music? What got you into it? What makes it you tick when it comes to music? What's the thing?
Okay, so let's see. Probably around the same time as I started playing was around the same time. Maybe I started listening a little bit before I started playing. You know, something about, so maybe around seventh grade. I was a sports kid. I didn't care about music before probably seventh grade. And I noticed, well, music's pretty cool. And there was a guitar laying around my house. It was my sister's. She had been taking lessons. I never didn't really take, and I just started playing it. You know, I just like using the book. I was following,
Yeah.
you know, like it just seemed to come kind of naturally, you know. So my parents got me I took a few lessons and I got a guitar and I was just off to the races, you know. And by like ninth grade,
And you're like, no more sports, right?
well, yeah, you know, it was like that. Like I knew it. I mean, I was okay at sports, but I could tell pretty early on, like I was going to be way better at guitar than I was at baseball. Like I was fine at baseball, you know.
Yeah.
But suddenly I was like pretty good at guitar, pretty fast, and so I knew that was, you know, more rewarding and it was fun, and you know, and music, it just seemed like a cool thing to do, you know. I mean, so yeah, but I love music. Like it wasn't just playing; it was like listening, you know, hearing like Rolling Stones was probably like the first time I heard a band that just like it made me want to go insane, you know.
Yeah.
Like that's how it affected me. Like it was like insanity, and it was definitely the Rolling Stones who, like the first time I listened to music and had that feeling like this is so insanely beyond good. Like good doesn't describe it. It's something, you know.
Yeah.
But, anyway,
Well,
but yeah, and then I just love music ever since.
It's ironic you said the Rolling Stones because I just saw them a couple months ago in Nashville, and they're still driving people insane. Like,
It was,
you know, like the show
Yeah.
starts and it's like the Rolling Stones, and like I think people like me, I'm like, oh, that's the Rolling Stones, like they're right there. And so there were kids there were older people, there were younger, like it was this whole generational thing happening. And it's probably the same with Paul McCartney concerts, right? Or the Who concerts now, right? It's you're bringing your kids or your nephew and nieces, right?
Right. Yeah, like right, because for my parents, it was, you know, and for people my age, you know, it was like it was called a generation gap. Like they definitely would not have understood why I love the Rolling Stones, you know. But you know, but I did, yeah. And that was, and then you know, it was an obsession, and I went on other obsessions. I had like a Grateful Dead obsession, and then a jazz obsession that was really like the longest lived, and you know, and other things here and there. You know, I did the jump bluegrass, I think bluegrass obsession. You know what I mean? I tend to like to get, you know, really obsessed with something, but not forever. You know, because there's something fun about moving on to a new obsession every now and again.
And how does that affect your playing, or not affect, but like how does that influence your playing that you've, you know, Rolling Stones, Grateful Dead, jazz, bluegrass, like, and knowing that the Grateful Dead incorporated kind of rock and roll, jam, bluegrass into their music.
Right. Yeah, I mean they're like you know, we joke in like the people who play like, I don't know, we call it old time music and Americana or bluegrass or whatever, that the Grateful Dead are like a gateway drug, you know, into that kind of music. But the same applies for jazz because of the modal style of playing, where you're not, you know, everybody's improvising. It's not just a soloist, and you're just in a key without chord changes and just improvising. That's like, you know, and then like it was like what Miles Davis introduced with like Kind of Blue, and so there's that connection, you know, between the Grateful Dead and jazz as well. But then I even like I left the hippie Grateful Dead thing, and it just became like a completely like immersed in jazz for a little while, because I just, you know, this is how I get.
What is it about jazz that, I mean, I find like I love jazz, and I find that people either love jazz or just
Yeah.
don't get it and hate it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, sure.
it's one of those it's like genres of music where like there's no in between, right? Like even kind of like you mentioned Miles Davis. I don't think people that like, there's people that don't like jazz and they wouldn't even like Miles Davis, right? Like,
right.
Right.
I mean,
you might not like rap, but you might like a certain rap song, right? So what is about jazz that it's that just yes or no, I think from a
well, I mean, it's it's a little harder to listen to, a lot of it, not all of it, but some like kind of blues not that hard to listen to, right? It sounds good as well as being like groundbreaking, you know. Some stuff is like groundbreaking, but not that easy to listen to, right? It's like,
right.
To say the least, and so I think, where jazz makes that conscious break from like a popular art form and a dance music into like a more abstract art form, almost even avant-garde art form, and sometimes people, that opens it up to criticism and that it's just like needlessly esoteric or brainy or something, I don't know. But and it seems some of it is like, I know from playing it, like sometimes I'm playing music and I know this would be more fun to play than to listen to, so sometimes
right.
sometimes
well, it's probably state of mind, setting, right? Like, I sometimes I don't like listening to a 27-minute solo by Trey
sure.
and Fish, right? Like,
sure.
when I'm working, right? So it's like, when I think of jazz, it's like, New York City, Chris's Jazz Club in Philly, where
right,
you're in that building and you're seeing these performers live, just improvising and jamming out, and it's, to me, that's killer.
It's great. I mean, there's nothing like it, really. And I think there's like, maybe when you get into like free jazz or whatever, it gets hard for people. But I mean, for regular straight ahead, jazz, it's amazing, I think, for almost anybody who likes music to, witness somebody. I saw Pat at Chris's Cafe. I've seen Jimmy Bruno there, and Pat Martino, and other jazz. There's so many. Philly has a real tradition of jazz guitar.
Eddie Lang. Eddie
Lang's one of the very first people to play like lead, jazz guitar. Right. There's a mural of him in the an Eddie Lang mural. It's like 8th and Fitzwater or something like that.
But it's crazy to think, like, Pat, you mentioned Pat Martino, and it's like, again, this chain of music, right? The Trey Anastasia from Fish, when Pat Martino died, he like talked about Pat Martino and he brought up how he was influenced by Pat Martino, right? Someone that, I love, Chris Robinson from the Black Crowes, was listening. I was listening to him do an interview, and in the background at his house was Eddie Lang, and he was like, he was telling the story. He's like, and the person asked, "What are you listening to?" He's like, "Oh, Eddie Lang," and I was like, "Oh, Philadelphia jazz guitarist," right? So these artists also just gravitate to the chain of listening to these sounds, and I'm sure it's subconsciously put in their heads while they're creating their own music, and absorbing that.
Right, and a musician is going to be more likely to want to maybe reach into what's going on there, because it's some of that old stuff. It sounds good if you like it, but it's an acquired taste, let's say. But it's just interesting in and of itself. Like, what do these people play like? When you want to kind of check that out, and like you said, the lineage of people who. But for people like Eddie Lang and other people, I think like Chet Atkins as a finger picker, and Elizabeth Cotton, like who taught? Nobody taught these people how. You know what I mean? They just
they were the pioneers. They were the pioneers, the starters of the way to play, which is
right. That's even harder to imagine, because it's hard enough now with like videos. I can watch like 20 videos. I can watch a Jorma Kaukonen video tomorrow. You know what I mean? But these people learned how to play with, from scratch.
So speaking of jazz, as part of the premise of my show, right? It's meeting a famous artist and band. And you have a story around the jazz scene where you've met.
Yeah. So, well, I met Pat Martino when I was at Chris's Cafe. And this is the thing, like, I knew who he was. Like, I haven't seen him a lot because he didn't play for a long time. He had a brain aneurysm.
Yeah,
or something.
he was ill. Yeah.
And he had he was living in South Philly that whole time. And then, but anyway, I knew what he looked like. And so I walked into the bar for the second show. I was just by myself. I had to not bring people to jazz shows because I was like, I'm afraid they'll be, like you're saying, I don't want to be bored or whatever. So I go.
You don't want them to say, "Hey Barry, I gotta go. I can't."
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
So anyway, so I walk in and I wanted to get a drink and I didn't know where I was supposed to be sitting or whatever. And so I see he's sitting at the bar and he's talking to this guy and there's a seat right next to him. So like, where do I go and sit and join in the conversation? And we're all guitar players, of course. The whole room is guitar players. And so he starts talking us. I mean, we hardly asked him. Like he was in between sets and he just wanted to talk guitar. And we're like, well, yeah, we're talking to Pat Martino. So, and then he starts getting pretty esoteric. And at one point he took out a pen and a napkin and he started drawing diagrams.
That's awesome.
I had no idea. Like at this point, this is how, I solo over augmented, sharp fifth chords or whatever. And I don't understand really what he's talking about because the whole situation is just great. It's like Pat Martino's giving us a guitar lesson.
Yeah.
On a napkin bar, you know what I mean? So that was probably, and then another time I remember going in, I wanted to see Sun Ra. There was a place called Memphis. It briefly had jazz in like the late 80s, early 90s, which is weird. It just came and went, so there's no like tradition or anything. It just was there. And jazz was kind of at a low point. So you could get like famous people. So I saw Sonny Rollins in there. And
oh, wow.
Milt Jackson in there, like big Curtis Fuller. And so we were going to see Sun Ra in there. And we're a little early, and so we went to the pizza place next door, and he was in there eating a slice. So he sat at the table next to him, and a couple of guys from the band. They have these like, I don't know if you've ever seen what they wear. These.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? These like sequin gowns and kind of thing, and these weird hats.
You definitely could pick them out of a crowd.
They stood out a little bit in the pizza place, we just made a little small talk with them, at the pizza place. Those are my two Philly, but like that's I don't know if I was maybe a little drunk or something, but I was at this show and the Brecker brothers, the Brecker brothers, they're jazz, Michael Brecker, the late Michael Brecker and Randy Brecker. They're from Philly or somewhere right around Philly, Elkins Park, and the guy playing at the show I was at, so that's the parents of the Brecker brothers. I was like, holy shit! So I ran up to them, and introduced myself, and I was so enthusiastic that I think they thought that I was like friends with them or something.
Yeah. Like I
didn't really know them.
I know your sons.
I said, you're Michael and Randy's parents, and they were like, oh, what do you play? And I'm like, I play guitar. I don't play with them. I don't want to get the wrong credit. But that was weird because I don't usually go up and introduce myself to people unless I have something particular to say, just to say hello. But those are probably my local, and they're all local tie-ins.
Yeah, and the great thing about local artists, or not even local artists, just the type of artists, it's the best when you can just walk up and have a conversation or have a drink to someone that you admire that plays music the way they do, right? It's and all about learning and trying to get better at your craft, whether you're a garage band or up on stage, right? I mean, we've all seen interviews where these famous people are like, oh, that guy's good. Paul McCartney talking about Elvis. I'm like, you're Paul McCartney. But he's like, oh, Elvis could sing, right? It's like, it's these insecurities too, right? Well,
nobody can do everything. Even, Paul McCartney's pretty close to doing everything, but really nobody could, so you Yeah, and there's a guy who I used to go see. His name is Elliot Levin. I don't know if he's like a sax player at Philly. He's been in a million bands. He's played with all of jazz royalty, in Philly. And I used to go see him when I was younger. He's only a little older than me, but and now I'm playing in a band. He's been playing with us, so I do gigs with people who I used to, and I find that people really in all types of music are pretty friendly, like people who are, know more stuff than you and have more experience, better than you, more, know the rope or whatever. Even at my age, there's still people who I look up to,
Yeah.
And people are I don't know, mostly people are pretty cool, I mean, people think of like when they think of the jerk kind of rock stars. I mean, not that many people are stars really.
Right. There's less stars than yeah.
There's not like a handful of stars, and even probably a lot of them are cool too. I wouldn't know, but people have been, I find in any style of music, and hopefully I've been can be that person for other people, where they are willing to help, and are cool about it.
How many bands do you play in currently, Barry, or how much do you play out? Like what?
Well, it still hasn't returned to like pre-pandemic, I do like some things by myself where I'm just like at farmers markets doing like some, just playing like folky country and jazzy stuff. And then I play in the band Stolen Moments, which is a jazz thing with Jerry Mayall and Ed Wilcox from Philly. And Elliot Levin plays sax with us, lately. And, we do some concert kind of things. And then like this, we're playing in Ardmore at this Sam's, whatever, brick oven. So I've never played there before, but, we get gigs like that. We're in a restaurant in the background and make a little money. It's great. We play what you want.
Yeah.
We keep it like to jazz standards. We don't want to be like
going out there.
We try to keep it like, songs that people know. And like I said before, I sound like when I play, I'm not really a jazz player. I sound like a guy who went and sang to the Rolling Stones and now plays jazz,
That's awesome.
But, and then I've recently been playing with this bluegrass band in Jersey, CornPickers, which is a bluegrass band centered around, we have people from Delaware and Pennsylvania, but it's centered around down here. I'm in Woodbury, and Mike, our sort of leader of the band, is in like Sewell or Pittman.
Nice. Yeah.
And so we have a gig at this Swarthmore. Have you ever been to this place in Swarthmore? This warehouse. It's called the Warehouse 3.
I gotta check this venue out.
It's such a fantastic venue, and I went there just to listen recently because I was so impressed with it when I played there. And it's like a antique shop, but it's like not a lot of stuff, but really cool stuff. And Robert, the owner, he built a stage, and he has a sound system and a sound person working it, and he just gives the door, charges at the door, gives that to the band,
communal,
and he just takes it to the door in cash and gives it to the band, and that's that. And it's all and it's just such an amazing room, and he brings in people, so you don't have to like we didn't really know what one we played. I played there with Stolen Moments, and so we're gonna play doing a bluegrass gig there in a little while, and a couple of March 12th with Jersey CornPickers. So those are the two things. And I also play with we haven't done anything lately, the Love City Music Collective that's headed by Peg Lane. I don't know if you know her. She's in Candy Volcano, and she's just
nice.
Just an amazing singer and leader of that band. And we were doing the music of Joni Mitchell.
Oh, that's awesome.
And we did some shows. We played at the Royal Cafe, and thanks to Peg, I got a chance to play a show at the Royal Cafe.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And Love City doing Joni Mitchell music of Joni Mitchell. A lot of people in that band you probably know. And then since then we haven't done anything. But that's another thing I'm in, and so I'm proud to be doing those three things.
So we're gonna have.
One more thing. Michele Harron. I played a duet with Michele Harron, and we played the music. We haven't done anything in a while with Michele Harron. She's in Candy Volcano, also other thing. She writes music, and they're fantastic songs. And we do a duet, and hopefully we haven't done anything lately, but we're trying to get some gigs now. So those four things.
You went from I just play around, and now you're in 4 different projects.
Four.
So Barry, you're going to be our first musical guest, where you can play us out of Rock and Roll Fridays if you want to play a little tune. And
Okay.
I appreciate you being on Rock and Roll Fridays, but we would love to hear some original Barry music. Very cool. Very cool. So you should be looking out for Barry Hollander in the South Jersey and Philadelphia area. Barry, it was awesome. I'm so glad we got to chat jazz finally.
Yeah, good, Mike. So yeah, I've been looking forward to doing this with you. So thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Barry.